Do you want to put your players through the ringer by developing a bleak and brutal world for your tabletop role-playing game? Well, today I'm going to tell you how. We're talking about a Grimdark setting and how to do it right. Let's get to it.
Welcome to Dungeon Brew.
Welcome back, everyone, to Dungeon Brew. Today we're going to be talking about a Grimdark setting in tabletop role-playing, what it is, how to build it, and how to run it without turning your game into a joyless slog. Sometimes when it comes to Grimdark, we focus a lot on tone and ambiance, but it's really about creating a coherent system of choices and consequences and having the emotional weight that carries throughout the game that really makes it meaningful for the players. If you do it right, it's actually one of the most immersive and character-defining styles you can run in your tabletop. I want to begin by talking about the core themes of a grimdark fantasy setting. And before you go off and go, Josh, you're always talking about themes, this really has to do with how you're structuring the story, how you're structuring choices, how you're structuring consequences, how you're really laying out those campaign quests for the players to make sure that it has the right thematics, because it is very important when it comes to this type of setting. So the first core theme that you really want to focus on is corruption. It is everywhere. It's in all the major institutions. Your leaders lie, religion, politics, the law. None of these things can really be trusted in a grim dark setting. Power overall exists to be abused. And if you can remember that, it can give you that ambiance that you're looking for when they're talking to political leaders and religious leaders, or even individuals who own their own business. Now, you may have the occasional good leader or the occasional good person, but they are a needle in a haystack. In fact, they're more like a needle in a field of haystacks. The second theme that you want to focus on is morality, and recognizing that it is always compromised within this setting. There are really no clean choices. There shouldn't be clean choices in a grim dark fantasy. Every path should cost you something. If you're doing the right thing, that doesn't mean that there's always a good outcome. So let's say that the adventurers, for instance, are tasked to go out and save a kidnapped child that is being ransomed. Well, the adventurers go out, they find the child, they kill the bad guy, and they return the child home. But the man that they murdered may have been a single father who was needing the money in order to take care of his own starving children, and now there's no one to raise them. So that's just an example that there should always be this weight on the scales where the give or take of one thing leads to a consequence that can be equally heavy on the adventurers' minds. And the third core theme that I like to think about when it comes to grimdark fantasy is survival. This is probably the easiest one to reiterate throughout the game. In fact, you should reward your players for surviving, because that is where victory is found. They are not going to change this world. They're really just trying to survive long enough to actually matter. And you should reward them for not dying yet. And another piece that goes along with this is recognizing that the world itself should not care about the players. Nature should be hostile. If there's gods, they're indifferent. The setting is actively working to grind down the players, where they're kind of like playing this battle of wit with their surroundings, and they know inevitably this can only end in death. So that should be a key piece of a grimdark fantasy. Those themes are really the bones to every grimdark setting, but then you can utilize some tools to just enhance it a little bit more with your players. And I want to give you 4 to think about. One is consequences. They are really everything throughout a setting. John and I did a video a number of years ago where we talked about grimdark settings and how every choice led to a consequence, which led to more choices. That is really the fundamental fuel that runs these types of games. Your actions should always leave some sort of mark on the world. Now, you do not want to be punishing your players arbitrarily. Just make sure that every decision they make does alter the next stage of the adventure, for better or for worse, whatever the case may be. There should always be this ripple effect, and your players should feel it. The second thing that you want to think about in regards to tools is the world continuing to move behind the scenes? The world shouldn't just pause because the players are having some sort of debate about how they want to move forward with the game. It isn't waiting for heroes. The world in itself is not waiting for them to do something. In fact, in many ways, the world is continuing to deteriorate as it competes with itself. plagues are going to spread, wars are going to advance, and people are going to continue to betray each other regardless of what the players do. And along with that, your third tool is utilizing hope. And this tool itself should be used pretty sparingly throughout the game. It does exist, it's just really rare within a Grimdark setting. So you might have one act of mercy, or an honest man, or a village that just completely hasn't been overrun with corruption, and those instances are going to weigh on the players to kind of give them this sense of what they're fighting for, especially if they are aligned towards the good. But you don't want to overuse this. You want this hope to feel fragile, but be enough just to keep allowing the players to move forward. And then your last thing that you want to utilize is writing some internal conflict for the players. This can be done in their backstories, which we'll talk about here in a moment, but you want to make sure that there is internal conflict throughout the world, including your NPCs. You want to give them real flaws. You want to make them conflicted about the choices that they're making, and you want those choices that they're conflicted over to reflect back on the players and who they are. This isn't really a world that gives you this balance of good versus evil. It's really about people falling in different directions and failing repeatedly, and Grimdark is a setting that is going to thrive on players trying to figure out what is the right thing to do, and those choices should have competing values. You should have a situation where players feel like they have to argue. They're going to regret some of the choices they have to make, and many times the wrong answer is going to look like mercy for the players. One of the things that I wanted to make sure to talk about in this video is that a Grimdark setting can actually be more than grim. It can be really demanding and draining on your players, and not every player group is going to want the same level of intensity in a Grimdark setting. So you want to make sure that you're keeping things on track and you're keeping things comfortable for the players around the table. This is why I recommend always having that session 0. It should be very mandatory for a Grimdark setting to make sure that you are clear about the tone, that you are letting them know that you're going to push some emotional and even ethical boundaries throughout the game, and get some consent about what they're comfortable with and what they would like to explore within the game setting itself. You also want to make sure that you are pacing yourself well throughout the game, so that not every session is so intense that your players don't really look forward into coming into the next session. You want to make sure that there is some downtime throughout the game for the players to be able to reflect on the choices that have been made, to have a moment to breathe, so to speak, so that the bleakness itself doesn't become dull. So even if it's just a quiet meal at a tavern, or having them reflect on a flashback of their battles or the things that they have been through, or retelling their stories to NPCs, that can be helpful. And then the last thing that I want to talk about is being willing to let your characters fail or even die. Sometimes when we start a Grimdark setting, we actually have our characters build several characters, so they have backups in case their player doesn't make it, and that immediately sets the tone for what type of game we're going to be playing. Every problem that you experience in a Grimdark setting isn't going to have a clean resolution, so these failures matter. Players grieving over the loss of companions that have been lost or choices that have been made can happen quite regularly, and that actually leads to really great narratives, and it shapes the choices they make down the line. My final thoughts are that when you are creating a Grimdark world, you want to keep it brutal, you want to keep it honest, and you want to let the players shape it with their scars. That is really the trick to the entire game. I'm interested in hearing what Grimdark settings you've actually ran, what themes you focused on, and what you did to make it feel like it was a Grimdark story at your table. Let me know down in the comments below, and in the meantime, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and go check out our Patreon, where we have resources for game masters like you. Talk to y'all next time.
Dungeon Brew.